Good morning to the garden. We are delighted to be here today. My name is Megan, and our agency is called Ascent 121, and we provide long-term trauma recovery services for teen survivors of sex trafficking here in Indiana. Joining me today is my friend Donna. She released a new album about a year ago that is a collection of songs that all have a message of hope, and she donated her album to our agency as a fundraiser, so I hope that you'll be inspired by her singing throughout our program today and purchase a CD to take with you and one for a friend as well. The first question I usually get when I talk to groups like this is about our crazy name, Ascent 121. Where did that come from? Well, we are a faith-based agency, and we're named after Psalm 121. It says, "I look up to the mountains. Does my strength come from the mountains? No, my strength comes from God, who made heaven and earth and the mountains." Recovery from sex trafficking is a long, hard road, and we believe that the power of God has a lot more to do with the redemption and recovery of the kids that we serve than our agency does. And we believe in that so strongly that we named our agency after that verse. A lot of people think that trafficking doesn't happen here, but it does. It happens every day in cities and towns all across Indiana. Our goal today is to help you have a better understanding of what human trafficking looks like, to tell you briefly about the work of our agency, and then give you a couple of ways that you can get involved with us if you'd like to. Some of the things that I will say today might sound horrifying if this is a new topic for you, and so we intersperse my talk with selections from Donna's songs from her CD, and it really makes for a powerful back and forth of story and song, so you can process some of what you're hearing while she sings. And I hope that her words will be an encouragement to all of you. Human trafficking is the second largest and fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world. Why is it growing so fast? Partially because of the demand, but also because of the supply. If you're a criminal and you sell guns or you sell drugs, once your guns and your drugs are gone, you've got to go find more to sell. But if you're in the business of selling people, you can sell that same group of supply over and over and over and over. It's almost like an endless supply of product. Around the world, half the victims of human trafficking are children, and of those children, the average age of entry into the commercial sex trade is in the early teens. We estimate that between 100 and 300,000 youth across our country are at risk for recruitment into human trafficking every year. One of the groups that is most highly at risk for trafficking are runaways. Every year, 1.6 million teenagers run away from home. And 1/3 of those kids will be approached for recruitment into the commercial sex trade within 48 hours of leaving home. Now, the kids we've met will tell you that it could happen even faster than that. To give you a sense of what trafficking looks like here in Indiana, we have a series of vignettes throughout our presentation. These are actual stories of kids that have come through our programs telling you some of the things that have happened to them.
I was having coffee at the mall with a friend. He came up to talk to us and asked if we wanted to party. We did. We wanted to have fun. He kidnapped me. He raped me. He made me sell myself. He beat me. He shot someone right in front of me. He lied. He cheated on me. He played me.
There's a national agency called Polaris, and they answer the calls from the National Human Trafficking Hotline. They released this map last year to illustrate where the most calls are coming from across the country to report suspected human trafficking. The darker the red in any given area, the more calls that come from that part of the country. And if you look on the map to where you ought to see the state lines of Indiana, it's so red, it's hard to even see where the state lines are. Human trafficking is frequently in the headlines here. These are just a few examples of media headlines from the last few months. From Fox News, human trafficking cases jump in Indiana. From The Recorder, labor and sex trafficking on the rise in Indiana. From Wayne TV, sex trafficking is the fastest growing crime in Fort Wayne. From Channel 13, Indiana at the crossroads of the human trafficking fight. And the most horrifying one that's been in the news in recent months is this one. Federal investigators detail the Sugar Shack where indie girls were drugged and sex trafficked. This is a house over on the west side near Speedway that had adults, women, and teenage girls chained to stripper poles in the basement. Men paid $300 an hour to be in a closed room with those girls to do whatever they wanted. That's horrifying. We know kids who were held in that house for several months. Some of them were assaulted dozens of times, and some of them were assaulted hundreds of times. And we even know a few that were assaulted thousands of times. You may be wondering how people get access to places like this and where they buy girls. Another article that was online recently says, officials seeing more human trafficking arrests stemming from adult services websites. This story reported that in the last year, more than 170 Indiana teens were reported as having been sold for commercial sex on websites like Backpage.com. Now, you may not be familiar with Backpage, but if you know of Craigslist, it's very similar to that. It's just a website where people can sell products and services. But on Backpage, there's a dating section, and you choose what kind of date you want to choose from, and then it presents all the girls that you can choose from. The pictures show girls and headlines, and a headline might say, "Stop messing with the fakes, real upscale beauty," and then underneath it a message from the girl that says, "Hey there, looking to have some fun? Maybe spend a little time with a sexy, fun young lady who loves to have a good time." And then the ad shows her age and what her service area is. And many of those ads will show a service area of North Indy and Carmel and Fishers. On any given day, there are between 100 and 150 of those ads on Backpage. And what you'll notice about those ads is that regardless of what age the person says that she is, if she's over 18, her ad likely includes a photo of her face. But if the ad only shows pictures of body parts, there's a very good likelihood that that person is under 18. And they don't put their faces in the ads because they don't want to be recognized by law enforcement. Many, many of the kids that we see have been sold in ads just like that and been sold to service between 10 and 20 men every single day. A lot of the work that we do is heartbreaking and awful, but we also see very many moments of hope. We see God at work in the redemption and the healing of the kids. And it's words like these that help us to keep going.
Thank you for teaching me that God loves me. I didn't believe that anyone could love me. Now I know I'm not alone.
By now, you may be wondering how this possibly could be happening right here in our own backyard. How many of you have seen the Taken movies? Most of our audiences are big fans of the Taken movies, and most people think that that's what human trafficking looks like. Kids in cages with handcuffs and chains and duct tape. Masked men snatching kids off of street corners and throwing them into vans, and Liam Neeson kicking down the doors to rescue them. And while we all love Liam, those movies do a real disservice to agencies like ours because they're very misleading. And as you'll see from our vignettes, domestic trafficking looks very different from what you probably see in the movies. Have a look at this slide while I'm talking, and I want you to think about when you were in middle school or high school. Can you remember moments of feeling any of these words or these feelings? Truthfully, I think we all have moments of feelings like this even as adults. Teenagers are especially vulnerable emotionally, and that's usually how girls are drawn into this. Traffickers know that teenagers are vulnerable, and they prey on that vulnerability. They can spot a vulnerable kid from across the room. They draw her into a relationship, and then they use that relationship to control her. Sometimes it's a family member or a friend, but oftentimes it's an older man that the girl has fallen in love with. We hear the kids say over and over, "I loved him. I thought I was going to marry him. It was him and me against the world. He loved me." And the girls really believe that, which is why the recovery process is as long as it is and as difficult as it is. As you listen to the different vignettes, you'll hear vulnerability being exploited. Girls looking for love and attention and shelter and security and other things. And it's that vulnerability that makes them easy targets for traffickers. There are a lot of factors that contribute to the demand for commercial sex. One of those factors is the highly sexualized culture that we live in. You may have heard Robin Thicke's song called Blurred Lines. The theme of that song is I Know You Want It. This song is one of the best-selling singles of all time. $15 million in sales, and the largest radio audience in history. And if you were to look this song up on YouTube to watch the video, you'd see that the video is very different from this photo, because in the video, all the women are naked. And our society has said that's acceptable to the tune of $15 million in sales for one song. We see similar themes in video games. Grand Theft Auto is the 4th best-selling video game of all time. 45 million copies sold since 2013. And most people think that that's a game about bank robberies, but also in the game, you can pick up prostitutes. The woman gets into the car and asks what services the driver wants. They choose their services, and then with very lifelike audio, the player can listen to those services being delivered. But it gets worse, because once she's finished and she gets out of the car, the player is presented with a screen of weapons that are pictured on the lower left side of the screen. Guns and axes and all sorts of different weapons. And the player can choose a weapon, and then he chases that woman around the city and kills her to get his money back. But 45 million people think that that's an acceptable video game, and many people are buying that game for children. Please understand, I'm not suggesting that all the human trafficking in the world is caused by Robin Thicke or Grand Theft Auto. I'm just using those as illustrations of a greater cultural issue that's causing a lot of the problems that we see and causing a lot of the demand for commercial sex. When media and culture teach our kids that those things are okay, it's no wonder that we hear kids saying things like this.
I'm not a child anymore. Stop trying to control me. I can make my own decisions. Weed isn't really a drug. It's even legal in some states. He's just a friend and he gives me weed sometimes. So what? He made me do drugs and men all night. No sleep. I would pray to God that he would let me go so that I wouldn't have to deal with the pain anymore. I just want to go home.
I've talked a lot about the issue of trafficking, and now I'll tell you briefly about the work that our agency does. Ascent 121 provides long-term trauma recovery for teen survivors. We work mostly with teenage girls, although we do see some boys as well. And sadly, we see some kids as young as 10 or 11. Some of them need residential care, and so we have a residential center down on the east side of Indy where they can stay if they need to. But if home is safe, that's a better place for them, so they stay at home and our therapists go there to work with them. We see over 100 kids every year. In fact, this year the number will be close to 200. Most of them spend between 6 and 12 months with us. If they're in residential care, they get medical care and individual and group and family therapy. They have high school classes and activities, and we also provide discipleship. Our agency also offers training events and community awareness events. We speak at between 75 and 100 events like this each year. Our goal is to raise awareness and to help families learn how to keep their kids safe. Our content varies depending on the audiences. Sometimes we do a concert event like this one, or we can do a presentation without the music, or we do a lunch and learn, or we have a specific curriculum for youth that's popular with church youth groups and high schools. Information about all that is on our website if you're interested to know more about that. And as we wrap up, you may be wondering how you can help. Most people come to an event like this and they're shocked to hear that this is happening and immediately say, now that I know, what can I do to help? There are several things that you can do. The first thing is educate your people. I want you to think for a moment about tomorrow morning. Wherever your Monday morning takes you, you'll run into people who ask about your weekend. I hope you'll tell them about this event and share with them some of the things that you learned today. Think about what other audiences you're connected to where you could invite us to speak. Maybe you're part of a civic organization or a student group that would be interested to hear from us. We would love for you to connect us with other audiences. There are handouts on our table, which is just outside the front door, where you can learn about a number of practical service opportunities that are available for individuals or families or community groups. And then the other thing that we hope everyone will do is donate. We hope that you'll make a donation today, and we hope that you'll consider becoming a monthly donor. You can sign up for that on our website. We have a donor match going on this month, so any money that you donate today or online today will be doubled. We're pretty excited about that. So to make a donation, you can stop by our table after service today, or you can go to our website. The last vignette that I have to share with you this morning is usually the hardest one for people to hear, but it's a story that we've heard from kids over and over and over.
I met him online. He was so nice. He understood me. He believed in me. He loved me. He picked me up and we took off together. He took me to a hotel. I had to make $3,000 a night before I could stop. I've been bitten and beaten and tasered. That was my life. But I got away.
I especially love the lyrics from that song because they have such a message of hope. This topic is so hard to talk about and our work is really awful. But messages of hope matter a lot. She said, "I've been pushed way past the point of breaking, but I'll be back on my feet. This is far from over, and you haven't seen the last of me." Hope changes everything, doesn't it? The trauma recovery work that we do is all about restoring hope to kids who've been beat up and battered and abused. And we hope that you'll join us in that effort. If you found this event informative, we want you to know that this is a traveling show. We can bring this to other churches or community groups. If you'd like to know more about that, you can catch up with Donna or me after the show. We also want to thank our band. Some of these are faces that you'll recognize from here at the Garden. They're the traveling band that we love to play with. If you were inspired by the music, we invite you to purchase some CDs today. 100% of the sales for CDs was donated by Donna to our Agency for Survivor Services. So every dollar that you spend helps a teenager find hope. And the really cool thing about the CD is that because she donated it just for us, the insert inside talks about human trafficking and educates about it and tells people a little bit about the work that we do. So maybe you buy one to enjoy for yourself and take one to share with somebody else that you'd like to talk to about what you learned today. CDs are $10 out at our merchandise table. We can accept cash and credit cards and checks. And then also, as Carolyn said, we have a special guest with us today, my friend Heather, who's an adult survivor. And she is out at our table. She has just released a new book of poetry and prose talking about her story of redemption and how God really has changed her life through the experiences that she's had. So if nothing else, I encourage you to pick up a CD and a copy of the book, chat with Heather, learn a little bit about her experiences, and she would be happy to sign books for you. And now it is my pleasure to invite Ken up to pray for us, and then we'll close our show with one last song.